Good afternoon, everyone. It is back with Life on Purpose Live, and we're so excited. We have Christine Varnado and Allison Schoonmaker. They are together. Not only are they friends, they have a counseling office together. They work together on a daily basis. Yes, and they have a new book out today, and we're going to talk about that today. So welcome, ladies. I'm glad to have you both here together.
Oh, thank you. Good to see y'all.
Congratulations on the book. So exciting. I know what it means to come out with a book, and I know the hard work that went behind it, and you did it. So hats off.
Thank you.
So let's talk about, what you do every day. I find it quite fascinating because counseling, it's become a big deal. As a coach, I see the benefits of being able to talk with people through whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So why don't you, Allison, start with, how did God call you to be a counselor?
Well, let's see. I felt like my dad's a Baptist minister. He's retired now. And so I've always just felt like I was called to ministry of some sort, just, I don't know, family trade, I guess. But I really, in high school, started feeling like God was going to have me in a full-time ministry position, just not really knowing what that would be specifically. And as I grew older and was getting through college, I just felt like my scope got narrowed to how could I help leaders specifically sort of process their heavy burdens. And that was kind of the beginning of it. And once I got into the work, I just have stayed more general than that. But that's initially how God called me into the field for sure.
All right, Christine, how about you? Because I think it's interesting how God calls you into it, but then you got to do the work to do it. And y'all have both done that. So Christine, how about you? Did you get in a fight somewhere that led you to this?
I personally did not get in a fight. And even though I am a redhead, I've reined that anger in. But in 9th grade, this is just a funny story that I like to reflect on. I was sitting in the lunchroom and a friend by me wanted to get in a fight with another guy. And I do not remember who the other person was. But I remember talking him out of this fight, and I was like, do you really want to do this? This feels like not your best choice. Will you sit down and count to 10 with me? That was like the height of my counseling skill in 9th grade. So it started young.
Yes.
And do you know, he did not get in a fight. So I'm going to claim it as a victory.
Yes.
And, but really, I knew early on that I wanted to be in some type of helping profession. And so I went a few different routes, or I planned on going a few different routes. I did undergrad in mass comm and psychology, but the Lord just continued to kind of narrow my path and to go into counseling. So that's kind of how it happened. And I'm really thankful because I happen to love my job. So glad he did that.
So I'm just curious. I know y'all have an office here outside of Baton Rouge. Do you do as many Zooms as in person, or more in person? I know with COVID, that kind of became an acceptable way to practice. Where's that in today's economy?
I do mostly in person. I do a lot of trauma work, so I don't enjoy doing that over the internet. You just never can tell when somebody's service is going to cut out. And it's not ideal.
Yeah. And similar for me, I do a lot of trauma with adults and with kids. So I do plenty of online sessions. Probably about maybe a fifth of my sessions are online. But for the most part, I'd prefer in person, and most people do prefer in person. It's just if their schedules or that kind of thing won't allow for that.
So let's talk about, you're both young families. So you're dealing with what the world's dealing with as you're helping other people deal with what the world's dealing with. So what are you finding to be tripping up not just families, but people in today's society? What's the hot button? Christine, let's start with you.
Okay. Yeah, that's such a good question. I guess if I had to pick one thing, in the field of psychology, we call it a window of tolerance. And so when I explain it to kids, I explain it as it's a window of I can handle things. And when we're inside our window, it can be hard things are happening, good things are happening, challenging things. If we can stay inside that window of I can handle things, we're managing. But when we leave that window, we can either go to explode mode or we can go to shutdown mode. And I usually draw it like a window, so you can like picture like a rectangle. I'm not great at drawing, so just visualize it, okay? And so like a window seal, you would put explode, and then the bottom little window seal would be shut down. But oftentimes what our windows are really starting to look like is they're getting very, very, very narrow. And what sends them into explode or shut down is like small things. So essentially their window of I can handle things oftentimes looks a lot like when things go my way, when I know what to expect, that kind of thing. And so, we knew it would happen, but here it is. There's the clock.
The clock. It's 4 o'clock.
We tried to solve that problem, but you can see we were unsuccessful. So that's a common thing, is just that narrow window of tolerance of I can handle things. And so through counseling, what we try to do is essentially widen the gap of being able to manage stuff.
Great.
And so Allison, tell me what that looks like if someone's feeling that window closing in on them and they're like, oh my gosh, I don't think I can handle school anymore. Or I don't think I can handle being at home anymore, at work anymore. What are those tools looking like that you're trying to hand over to people so that they can look at that window and begin to break it down into the emotional strategy of how to deal with whatever it is you got to deal with?
Yes. So I feel like a lot of this depends on what therapy model a therapist would use.
Yeah.
But as luck has it, we use pretty similar models.
Yeah.
So for my work, I would be looking at some grounding practices, simple stuff like breathing techniques or positive visualizations, but also another layer of looking at somebody's self-talk through cognitive behavioral therapy is what I use most often. And it helps educate people about the connections between their thoughts and their feelings and behaviors. And if they're getting overwhelmed too quickly, there's a component of how they're talking to themselves that's increasing their disturbance. So we would want to get in there and start to dissect what exactly they're thinking that is making things feel bigger than necessary.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And cognitive simply means new behaviors, right? It's just about, you get panicked. So then you have panic attacks. So you then develop a strategy to then put a behavior before the panic attack gets out of hand, correct?
Yep, that's around a bit.
Okay.
The connection with, you can either change things by changing the way, what the behavior, you can change the thought. It's hard to change our emotions out of thin air, but you just kind of got to enter the cycle where it's the easiest to enter, and then start to redirect towards a place that you'd rather be.
Yeah. So it really is learning new skills, which
definitely
old patterns, and let's kind of talk about that, because I find that with the progression of phones and things like that, people are not communicating. When I coach people, I work with them on communicating completely. It's one thing to communicate and enter into a conversation, but very few times people complete those. And then therefore there's assumptions made. So how do families in today's society, phones aren't going away, learn to communicate effectively so that things aren't getting miscommunicated, assumptions aren't being made, and they can then as a family work through things together?
Yeah. I would say maybe what's really helpful is to match. And as a twin, Beth, I love to match. And it's really helpful for our body language, our tone of voice, our words, and the message that we want to say to all match. And so that's one step in creating just like open and honest and healthy communication, is like we have to be real about what we're saying. If you're expecting someone to be reading your mind or knowing what you're thinking, you can pretty much count on the fact that you will be misunderstood, because people are terrible mind readers.
Yep.
Even though we want them to be great at it, they're not. And
Yeah.
that, I think that's, trying to make it all
And
natural.
I would like to make the point that it doesn't matter how long you've been married. I've been married 30 years. Your husband's never going to learn to read your mind, and he's never going to
You're right.
ever. So you have to say, honey, can you help me with, or honey,
Right.
yeah. So, yeah. So Allison, what are your thoughts on that?
I would say for us, well, growing up, like the only time we were having a family meeting, like we were moving, like it was some big deal. We were a big, hey, we need to sit down and talk. And, well, I was raised in the 80s, so that's a different parenting style. But we want to have conversations that are more routine, that sort of like take the heaviness and importance out of a conversation, to where it's like we can talk about little stuff, but if we're in the pattern and routine of having regular check-ins as a family, talking about bigger stuff isn't going to feel as overwhelming.
Yeah. And how important is it for parents to put their phones down when they're listening to their kids?
Oh,
great idea.
Yeah, great idea.
We highly recommend it. And also, it's not that you would never use your phone. That's unrealistic. Or
Right.
it's not that you wouldn't be on social media, or or using your phone, because obviously we hope people are on social media and you're watching us right now. So,
yeah.
But just to have at least some moments of connection.
Yeah.
That your whole body is engaged. Your you've got their eye contact. Perhaps we love to focus on connection as the premise of this book, but even just like a healthy physical touch can be really connecting for a child. So whether it's like, that's it, nailed it, hand on the shoulder, high five, brushing or playing with hair, that type of thing, being on their level really communicates that I'm hearing you, I'm seeing you, I'm listening to you, that kind of thing. So little things like that, even though they're small moments, they can have big implications for your kids.
Yeah.
Maybe go in a little bit of a different direction. I think that there's value in your kid knowing that, like, hey, I'm on the phone right now, and you're going to need to figure out how to open the obstacle without me.
Right.
Yeah.
Or just like hold your question for another 5 minutes. I think that there's a lot of value in that, and like the kids thinking that they deserve all of us all the time is probably not the right precedent to set.
Yeah.
But okay, with all things though, there needs to be some good balance, and navigating all that takes a lot of wisdom.
Yeah. That's so true. So in the book, it's head to toe devotional. So let's talk about that, because we feel from head to toe. We do. What is involving all of those emotions with the Proverbs? Because you got a lot of wisdom in there. What does that look like in doing a devotion with the family? Because it is important to be able to think about everything from a big picture standpoint. So what does a good, positive devotional time look like in a family setting?
I think I would say to that, go ahead and set your expectations low, because lower that bar, mostly because if you're going to be doing it with kids, you can just expect that there will be some distractions. They will probably not take it as seriously as you have intended. But if we set the bar so high and we want this devotional time to look like this structured, perfect family time where everyone's nestled together and reading, and we have their full attention the whole time, we're going to end up setting ourselves up for failure instead of success. So go ahead and lower the bar. And simply the body parts are so helpful, because you engage, different body parts. And we just talk about how you can use that, all of your body to honor God throughout this devotional. But you can lower that bar and have a little bit of fun together, just practicing these activities without it looking like a super structured lesson.
Christine is a very gracious parent, and like never gonna, you just don't have crazy expectations of your kids, which is great. I think about today, I went to lunch with my dad, and all throughout growing up, my dad would take me to lunch or dinner, pretty regularly. And he would always joke and try to get me to go to McDonald's, but I'm like, no, take me to the good restaurant. But there were a lot of times when I was a teenager where I didn't always want to go, and I didn't always know what we were going to talk about. And I just remember some like painfully quiet dinners. But he stuck with it, you know, and the overall message of I'm going to show up for you on your good days and your bad days. And there's no amount of you being difficult that's going to stop me from wanting to engage in you. And I just think the overall message of we're at least trying to have these conversations with our kids that are meaningful. We're trying to engage scripture as a family, and that message of like the attempt can sometimes be the biggest takeaway for our kids out of all of it.
Yeah. It's a great.
So showing up is the first part, and then doing what you have with what you've got, you know, being real, you know, I think being real, and, you know, and what about families that are broken? You know, I grew up in a broken family, and, you know, I had a lot of, you know, what many kids go through. You don't have a dad present in your life. Your mom's working 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. You know, there's a lot of kids that are coming from just chaos. And so how can they take what they've got and try to make the best of dealing with those emotions? Because, you know, you stuff those emotions when you don't know what to do with them. So how can you help kids and families that are in those situations? Because there's a lot of those as well.
Yeah. You want to talk about wisdom partners?
That's exactly what I was going to talk about. That this book was designed to be done with a wisdom partner. And when we wrote this book, we didn't want it to just be for the standard family, mom, dad, and 2.5 kids or whatever the statistics are. So essentially, you know, it can be for kids from broken homes. This a single mom can do this with their kids, a grandparent, a church leader, an older sibling, whomever it might be. But that's the point, is that kids would have at least one positive adult in their life that would be willing to invest in doing this Proverbs project with them. Yeah.
One of my mom's friends told us that she tries to do like a little bit of a devotional with her grandkids that live like across the country. And so there's just a lot of applications for this. And we are never going to be people that expect it to be one certain way, because that's where people will do nothing rather than be like the perfect standard. So even if it's like an adoptive or foster family, there's just a lot of different, the idea is you're going to get a wisdom partner out of this, that you, after the Bible study is done, you can continue to have these wisdom building conversations of how your faith informs your life choices. Yeah. And that's really the gift that keeps on after the Bible study's over, is you get these relationships that are really grounded in connection and God's truth.
And that's so true. And, you know, we talk about spiritual families. I know a lot of people that talk about their spiritual families. I've got some that, you know, they're my brothers. They're, you know, from another mother, but they're from the same father. But it's true to, you know, it's good to make ourselves available to other people. Yeah. Especially when we're empty nesting and things like that. So for me to be able to see my neighbors across the street, maybe give them a book, is a good idea.
How about that?
Right?
It's a great idea.
Yeah. So making ourselves available for other people, I think is very important. So what could the church do? I know y'all are counselors, so I like to talk to y'all because you may have your office in a church, but where are churches, what are good things churches can do, people in churches? And by this, I don't mean preachers. I mean people that are trying to reach the world for Christ. What is a way to enter into those relationships with people we may not know well, but we may know, you know, I think I could minister to this person. I may go to lunch with this person, maybe a single mom, maybe a kid. You know, my husband is now working at King's Kids in our church, and he's a Gigi for those kids, you know. So
that's awesome.
I think we got to all come together and realize that we do help one another. We do come together as a body of Christ, and certainly as one big family. So what do y'all say to how important that is?
Man, so good.
Yeah.
I think the easiest entry point to getting to know anyone or serving anyone is going to be through food. So, bringing.
I thought you were gonna say. I was like, "Ooh, what's she gonna say?"
I was going to say
food.
chocolate chip cookies, but I decided to go more broad.
Food is so true.
Yes, like nobody's going to be mad if you're like, "Hey, on Wednesday I'm going to bring dinner by and just drop it off for you," because I know that you're having a crazy week. Right. Also, if anyone wants to bring me and Christine dinner, we'll having a crazy week.
You're good. You're take it.
Or like, hey, why don't you come over on Friday, bring all of your kids, and we're gonna have like a kid-friendly meal, and like nobody's gonna be too cool for that. Like that's a winner for everybody, and it's a great way to just seem very approachable and supportive. And there's nobody better than someone's just genuinely interested in hearing your story. And sharing some calories together is a great way to open that up.
Agreed. Amen.
And it doesn't have to be home cooked. It can be up. It can be pizza. It can be store bought. It can be pick up and carry over. I think that has become acceptable in today's world. If someone is sick and they're having surgery, I'm picking up Mexican. I'll drop it off. In a bag.
Yeah.
Yep.
Totally okay.
Yes.
So let's talk about what kids are facing. What's causing the loneliness? What's causing the high depression? What's causing so much feeling of isolation? I mean, what is that that's happening? Is it some of it just we know more about it now? Or is it just, I mean, how are y'all helping people with that?
Yeah, it's hard to say exactly what's causing it because we're in like a epidemic of just an increase of anxiety and even depression among children. So this is of concern. But I will go with, like I said, there's a lot of contributing factors, but connections are low. And when connections are low, so mental health issues are high.
Yeah.
And so if we're not having, for kids, adults, whomever, you can fill in the blank. If you're a human, you can count on the fact that you need connections. So if we don't have healthy people to connect well with, then we're going to see a rise in that. So at home, that looks like, being intentional with your family as far as connecting, which is like making time for easy and hard conversations. The eye contact, physical touch kind of stuff, little things like that are just really significant, but also knowing that we need the wider community. So as far as like, we'll need, friends and connections with other healthy people in our lives.
Yeah. And Allison, I want you to touch on the fact that those people don't come knocking on your door. And this is something I've talked to with women a lot. Okay, your best friend, you want a best friend, but they're not going to just come knocking on your door. So being intentional about creating those relationships, how important is that? It takes a little effort.
Wait, let me preface this. Allison is like so super good at friendship. She's so nice. She knows how to do it right. So she's coming from just a good place,
Okay, good. That's good. That's
very nice.
Some people are not good at that. They just sit home and they pray, God, please send me a best friend. And then that, you got to go out and you got to be where best friends might be.
Yes.
You're right.
Yeah.
You are right. You also sound like you would give good dating advice with that same spot. I have a lot of thoughts here. Let me start. I'm like not a one best friend kind of person.
Right.
I think we need to have like Ryan's or Ponderosa mentality versus Ruth's Chris. It's like you can get a lot of different things that you like. That's so like you can pick and choose as far as like, oh, I need this friend's going to teach me about parenting, or this friend's going to be a really great source of encouragement, and this friend is somebody that I can pray with on the regular.
Mhm.
So thinking rather than I need to get all of that in one person,
Yeah.
again, that's a really high bar, and that's
It's too
intense, and there's like a lot of ways that can go weird. So thinking more in terms of I can have these really great healthy connections with a variety of people, and that I don't have to bring in incredibly high expectations to any one person, is a much more successful approach to friendship. I also think people are just generally pretty starved for more intentional relationships.
Yes.
But you don't,
Mhm.
I think something that's like a really easy starting point right now in Christianity pop culture is the Enneagram. And I think that people love talking about themselves. So that is a great tool. I don't know how familiar you are with that, Beth, but a great tool for people to get to know one another in sort of a broad stroke way and find connections and similarities. So
Mhm.
using something like that where that is in the vernacular of the Christian discipleship world, but it's like a kind of an easy entry point is
Yeah.
that kind of a fun tool to use.
Yeah.
Following
Yeah. That.
kind of the heart of friendship for me too. And
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
well, if you're going to tell me Christine's got a grandma named Britches, okay? And like every once in a while I hear about Britches. She's just always having a bounce back of like, well, gosh, you know, we thought we were going to lose Britches, but the
She's
news
back.
is 3 years later. She's still around. So
Britches has still got her britches on. She's still
Britches
walking
is
around
a
in those
fighter.
britches.
she's a wonderful human. And you know, just stuff like that's sort of the heart of friendship for me, of just like, you got to know who your people are dealing with, what's on their heart, and follow up on it. And if you can deliver on the follow up, you're going to have a good friend.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's so true. And, you know, I tell people all the time, if you're into working out, go to a gym. If you're into reading, go to a library. If you're into needlepoint, go to a fabric store where they're doing things, you know. And I mean, I can run from those places. I cannot run from a fabric place fast enough because they are not going to be my friends, right? But, you know, maybe someone who wants to hang out outside, you know, you know, you go where the people are. And I think that's important today because, you know, you want to find friends where you can do things with and get out and you know, share coffee, share lunch, or whatever. So
Definitely.
let's talk about the devotions.
Okay.
I love the book, the Proverbs Project. So obviously there's Proverbs involved, so you've got the Word of God in there.
That's right.
You've made it simple for parents to get out and do a devotion. You've got some little activities in here. So why the book? Obviously this was working for you. So tell us why people need this book, because you wrote it and you know people need it. So tell us about why it's awesome.
Okay, so many things. So we're really excited to put the Proverbs Project out into the world because our heart is that it would be very connecting for families or the wisdom partner, whomever that is for people. But obviously, you know, God's ways and his economy and his kingdom just look so much different than the world's ways. So if we don't have a good foundation for seeking out just godly wisdom, we will be very much pulled by the world. So it's so instrumental that we equip families to be able to have a resource and to how to point their kids to biblical wisdom. So that's an important factor. We do love family, so which is why we made it a family devotional. And you know, so it would be a connecting, the family would connect well together, and they would also be able to connect well with God through this. And that in and of itself is just a largely connecting thing. Why else do we like this book? It's also because it's just easy breezy, lemon squeezy, as I like to say, Beth.
You do say that.
I say that a lot. I actually want a t-shirt. So, but
well, and it, you know what, it prompts those conversations. Sometimes people don't know what they need to talk about, but you know, through this, it brings up all the things that needs to be brought up. And while, you know, someone may not respond right then, you know, they may come back around to a topic later
Absolutely.
And Allison, what are your thoughts on that?
One thing that I love about the book is, well, the book of Proverbs is just so vast anyway.
It
So
is.
like we didn't have any shortage of topics. So things like if your friend asks to copy your homework, if you're having anxiety, if you want to know how to serve people better as a kid, like there's just a lot of really practical. People are going through these. The kids are going through this stuff at school. Gossiping, telling lies, like issues that are on the daily presenting themselves at schools for our kids. This is what we're getting to talk about in the book. So it's not anything high and lofty that is not going to have a quick application. So it feels very much like anybody with an elementary age kid could pick this up and be like, oh yeah, we had this problem last week. What are they going to say about it?
Yeah. And I think it's important to say there's no right or wrong way to do it. You can't mess it up because you don't, like you said before, you don't have to have this perfect conversation. You're just basically bringing topics up. So there's fertile ground for maybe you do a devotion on a Monday. Maybe that doesn't come up till Friday.
Right.
I mean, you're just opening doors, right?
Yeah. And I would even add, it also just sets the foundation to begin to talk about spiritual things. So obviously, you know, we're doing the Proverbs Project with our own kids. So, and even we recently read one about, you know, you can either use your words to build someone up or tear them down. So in a sibling little tiff, you might call it, we were able to remind, like, hey, remember you have some options with your words and you get to decide what you want to do. And it wasn't like a huge, like, shameful disciplining moment. And I don't even remember if they made the right choice. They may not have, but at least they're, you know, they're starting to think about these things. We're starting to have the foundations for easily bringing it back up in conversation.
Yeah. And from a empty nest standpoint, you know, I can, the Facebook memories come up and I can say to my kids, oh my gosh, do you remember when we did this or when we did that? And then you can go back into those conversations, about prayers that we had or songs that we love. And you remind them of that foundation later in life because you want them to remember that they've got it in there and to get it out and use it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So,
there's one. Can I jump in?
No, go ahead. Yeah.
The nature of Proverbs is like things usually can turn out this way, but not always. Like, as you were talking, I was thinking about the verse.
Train up a child.
Yeah, that one. Train up a child in the way they should go, and then when they're
old, he will not depart.
Yeah, thanks, Chrissy. Bible drill kid.
You know it.
So that is a usually proverb. It is not a guaranteed. There are plenty of prodigal children out, right? So this nature of Christianity, that we really want things to be slam dunk guarantees, that that sort of black and white thinking goes hand in hand with kids, right? Because that's where they're at developmentally. But I wanted to create a place where there's some nuance that's allowed, where we, just because things don't work out like we think God would want them to, doesn't mean we have to like throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
So that was really important for me with this work to take any problem that kids might be facing within their family or at school or friends and think like, how do we apply God's word here, even if it's not going to work out perfectly? How can this still be relevant? How can we still put our hope in God regardless of outcomes? So that nuance is really important to us as therapists. And I just felt proud to be able to bring that to a resource for families.
Well, it is. And, I think it's important to remember it's the long haul. It's not it's not the moments that you feel so bad about, I really wish I'd have said this or done that. you want to get to the place where you're at my age and stage in life and you're like, my kids knew they were loved. Did I do everything right? No. Did I do some
No
really
one
stupid
will.
things? Yes. Did I have to go back to them and sometimes say, I'm so sorry, I really handled that terribly, please forgive
Yes.
me. Those are the things, but those are real conversations that you have and that you build a life on. And
Mhm.
then one day you get to have grown people that get to come hang out with you, and it's so much fun.
Can't wait, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I'm so excited about y'all's book. I'm so excited that we finally got to do our interview. So where can people get it?
Amazon. You can search the Proverbs Project on Amazon and it'll come right up. You can also visit us on our website at theproverbsproject.net and it'll have all of the links to our social media accounts and also the Amazon link.
And if people need you to be a counselor for them, where can they reach out to you for that?
Okay, I'm at www.healingheartscounselingla.com.
Yes, I'm springlifecounseling.com.
And what we'll do is we'll have you both put those in the links so that if anyone wants to reach out to y'all, then they'll be able to reach directly to y'all. Well, I'm so glad that y'all came on. I find the topics are so fascinating. So I'm so thankful that y'all are counseling people. I know people need that. I still have a counselor on speed dial. I mean, I'm a big believer in counseling, coaching, all the things. And, why not have those resources available, and why not take your questions to someone who can be objective and not involved, not emotional, and,
Sure.
get some help. I mean, everybody needs help at some point.
You're right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having us on. This has
been
fun.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank y'all. We'll come back around and do this again later. It's been great to have y'all, and I'm so glad that Christine, we met and got to have fun, and Allison, that we got to meet through Zoom. And hey, we'll do this again.
That's right.
Great to us.
Yeah. Thank you, Beth.
Thank y'all.